Well, welcome to episode 3 of Imagine the Pop, a wrestling podcast. I'm your host, Matty B. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for downloading, for streaming, wherever you are. It's fantastic to have you. And what an episode of Raw we've just had this week. 2 weeks out from Wrestlemania. Of course, it was going to be a big one. We had Logan Paul set. We had Roman Reigns set. We had the aftermath of what happened with KO and Sami. Possibly the worst kept secret in all of wrestling. That yes, they would come back together. That yes, these lifelong brothers would work out their differences. So very exciting times. It was always going to be a massive episode. Lots happened, lots to talk about. We'll get right into it. But first and foremost, let's talk about the news. So as you may know, what I like to do here on Imagine the Pop is split the news into 2 different sections. We have our narrative news, which is what WWE and other promotions want us to see, want us to know about, want us to care about in the narrative of the shows and the pay-per-views and the storylines they're putting forward. And then there's the other section of the news, which is the more behind the scenes industry speculation, chatter, rumor side of wrestling that as wrestling fans we all know and love, and we all love to speculate. So it's good to kind of split the two up. And we'll start with the narrative news as always. And really there's not been much since obviously SmackDown to Raw is quite a quick turnaround, the Friday to the Monday. But the main bit of narrative news that did come out is the lineup for the men's Fatal 4-Way Tag Showcase match at WrestleMania. Yes, it is a bit of a mouthful. Yes, it is a bit of a strange one. You might remember from SmackDown that it was announced there would be 2 showcase matches for WrestleMania, 2 Fatal 4-Way Tag matches, 1 women's match and 1 men's match. And on SmackDown, they had a qualifier. They didn't announce who was going to be in the match, but they had a qualifier, Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan versus Tegan Nox and Emma. And it looks like that's what they were going to do. They were going to spend the next 3 shows before Mania doing these qualifying matches to get the lineup set for these 2 showcase matches. Nope. Turns out over the weekend we might be doing that for the women's side, but on the men's side there will be no qualifying. The lineup has already been announced. We are going to get the Street Profits, we are going to get Braun and Ricochet, we are going to get Alpha Academy in Chad Gable and Otis, and we are going to get the Viking Raiders. So this was the 4 tag teams announced in the lineup. And as I said on the last episode for the SmackDown recap, this to me smells like a way to crowbar in stars that should have a place at WrestleMania, but there's no narrative reason for them to be there. So let's make a reason. And I'm not complaining because Street Profits are fantastic. Ricochet and Braun have been really impressive over the last month or so as they've come together. I love the Alpha Academy. Chad Gable has really impressed me, especially in the last few weeks, and we'll get on to more of that in the Raw recap. The Viking Raiders, I think maybe just because it's WrestleMania, higher production, higher budget, their whole Vikings Valhalla presentation might be quite fun at WrestleMania. But in terms of the match, I could take them or leave them, but they're going to be there. They're going to be a different dynamic. So it'll be a good match. It'll be a good match. It'll be a nice reprieve between the other more mainstay matches that we're looking forward to, like Edge and versus Finn Balor in Hell in a Cell, and Roman and Cody. And it'll be a nice sorbet. It'll be a nice cleanser of the palate between the other matches. It'll be good. But yeah, so that's the main narrative news, is the full lineup announced for the men's showcase tag match. And then on to other news. 2 main bits of other news that I want to pull out. First of all is the news that broke that Goldberg is now a free agent. He is no longer in contract to the WWE, which for me, I'm personally very happy about. I think there's a lot of people that are very happy about this. I think Goldberg had run his course, and have him coming back for 2 matches a year to basically do a quick 5-minute finisher versus finisher match at a Saudi show wasn't really helping anybody. Probably the money he was on probably wasn't worth it. So yeah, Goldberg is now out of contract with the WWE. I think he still wants to have one more retirement match with WWE. I'm not sure if there's an interest there. Obviously, there's the speculation that now he's a free agent. He could go to AEW. He could show up in New Japan. He could do all these things. So who knows? Tony Khan has quite a bit of money. He may well pop up in AEW at some point. Who knows? But yeah, Goldberg currently out of contract with WWE. So hopefully, well, it sounds a bit mean, but genuinely, I've never been bothered by these Goldberg matches over the last few years. I've not seen a point in them. So yeah, let me know what you think. Always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on TikTok and Twitter and YouTube at Imagine the Pop is the tag. It'd be great to hear your thoughts. But personally, this is no great loss and makes perfect sense to me. And then the second bit of other news is really a continuation on a recent theme. I don't know if you've seen on social recently where there's been WWE superstars being hounded at airports, and I want to say by fans, but these are fans that they're coming with merch that to get signed, which is obviously not their merch that they want to keep hold of. It's Funko Pops, it's posters, it's a few other things, and it's multiple copies of the same thing that you're just like, they want to sell that on and try and make a couple of $100 or a couple of £100, which is a shame. And not only is it a shame that that's their main motivation, but it's also a shame the way they seem to be going about it. So I think Rey Mysterio was the first one that popped up online of a video of him basically saying no because WWE doesn't let them, which makes sense because WWE have a revenue stream, have a business model around the VIP meet your superstar experience and all of that. Then there was Liv Morgan, who is a fan favorite and is so lovely. She was caught and she was harassed, and she signed a couple of things, but that seemed to only kind of encourage everybody. And then we've not had the footage from it, but then Rhea Ripley has come out on Twitter. This is what's happened over the weekend. She's come out and just categorically said, I am now not going to sign anything unless it's a picture of you and me together. It sounds like she had an incident at an airport while she was traveling where fans harassed her not just through the airport but outside as well. And she really wasn't happy, so she's come out and taken a stand. And so it's going to be interesting if WWE announce anything official at a corporate level, because part of the wrestlers getting over is their relationship with the fans. And so where do they draw the line? How do they draw the line? What is harassment versus fandom? What is appropriate? What is not? They are human beings that go out in the world, that travel in airports and the same way that the rest of us do. It's part of the gig almost to be famous and to get over and to take pictures. And I think they all appreciate that. But it sounds like there are a bunch of people that are just taking this too far. And if we're not careful, they might ruin it for the rest of us, which might be very sad indeed. So if you're listening and this is you, stop it. Stop harassing wrestlers. They're human beings. Treat them as such. They're good to us in everything that they give to us and the time they give to us. Let's not ruin it, because before you know it, WWE might clamp down on it and make everything behind a paywall, and we'll be disconnected. Who knows? So yeah, if this is you, stop it. And yeah, that's the end of the news. So let's get into it. And of course, the show kicked off with Kevin Owens music hitting. Kevin Owens coming out, a great pop from the crowd, great reaction. And Kevin comes out, but he stays at the entranceway. And then quite quickly, his music stops and Sami Zayn's music kicks in. And we get an even bigger pop from the crowd. and Sami Zayn walks out. And I'm telling you, the two, if you've ever seen someone who's comfortable in their own skin and comfortable in their own situation, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens walk into that ring so comfortable, so confident, so happy. It was just, it was such a good thing to see. And then when they got to the ring and the music died down, the crowd were chanting, Sami, Sami. And so KO said, sounds like you've got a lot of support. And then Sami said, well, I don't think I'm the only one they like. And then the crowd started chanting, KO, KO. And it was a great moment. It was a great moment. And this whole promo was positive and was good. And everything is about Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens being friends, being brothers, being stronger than ever. They're joined. They're going after the bloodline. But KO did kind of make a little side comment, which is in character because of the nature of the guy that he is. But also, it's also just a tiny little reminder that maybe you can't trust Kevin Owens. Maybe he might turn at some point, because when the crowd did start chanting KO, he did make a comment to say, that's very nice, although I know that you're only doing this because you were chanting Sami, and then Sami said, So KO, he kind of played that off, and that could be taken two ways. That could be Kevin Owens being all self-deprecating, which he is, or it could be that tiny little seed that, again, at some point when the bloodline is all said and done, moving like 6 months down the line, a year down the line, maybe there's that seed that Kevin again will turn on Sami, and their story will just keep rolling and rolling and rolling. Hopefully not. And even if it is, let's not think about that. That's in the future. Well, let's enjoy the joy of the present, which is that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are together. They're on the same page, and it's really exciting. And it's the worst kept secret in wrestling. Everybody saw this a mile off. But of course, now Sami and KO are together, and Sami didn't win the title at Elimination Chamber, and KO didn't win the title at Royal Rumble. What else are they going to do? But they're going to look at the WrestleMania sign, and everybody knows what they're thinking. And to that point, that's when the Usos come out, because the Usos know what they're thinking. And so Jimmy and Jay come out, and they have their little backs and forwards. And KO says, right, look, we all know what everyone's thinking, so let's just say it. Me and Sami versus you guys for the tag titles at WrestleMania. The crowd go nuts. But Jimmy comes back and says, nah, we're not going to do that. And Jimmy is quite against the idea. He doesn't want to do it. But then Jay, very interestingly, Jay interrupts him. And Jay and Jimmy, no tension at all. So there's no bother. But Jay comes in and actually accepts the challenge. He takes it as an opportunity to solve the Sami and the KO problem once and for all. So Jay accepts the challenge, and then they scuffle in the ring, they scuffle outside of the ring. KO and Sami get the upper hand, and the Usos gather themselves together, get a couple of chairs, and they're ready to go back in with weapons. But then on the big screen, what I would always call the Titantron, because I'm an old man who lives in the Attitude Era, we see a nice black SUV come up, Solo gets out, and then Roman gets out. And as soon as the Usos see Roman is in the building, they back off from Sami and KO, and they head backstage. And to open Raw, it was a really good segment. There was no better way to do it, honestly. And we've got less than 2 weeks left. They really needed to get this match on the WrestleMania card, and so now they've done it, and everybody's really excited. But interesting that the Usos, as soon as they saw Roman, backed off and walked out, like not being that autonomous. But a great start to the show. And then, as I said last episode with SmackDown, we got to remember that these shows are wrestling shows, and so as much as the promos are fantastic, let's get into the matches. And sure enough, the first match of the night was Austin Theory versus Montez Ford for the US title, and this follows on from Raw last week, where the Street Profits were making fun of Austin Theory backstage and how Cena had roasted him on that promo a few weeks ago. So Theory challenged Dawkins last week, beat him, and then took it a little bit too far afterwards, giving Dawkins the STF, which is John Cena's signature submission. Montez ran out to chase Austin Theory off. It's funny, and I can see why Vince changed Austin Theory's name to just Theory, because whenever you talk in parlance like this and you say Austin, you are kind of referring, or everyone just assumes you're referring to Stone Cold Steve Austin. So on one hand, I know lots of people don't like the fact that Vince McMahon wanted to change names of different wrestlers and took quite a dim view on it, but it kind of makes sense here. Although I like that he is Austin Theory, but maybe it's just a me thing. Maybe I just need to get more disciplined at calling him Theory instead of Austin. Maybe that'll help us kind of split the difference. So Theory in a match with Montez Ford, and this was exciting because Theory is a top talent. He's got one of the top belts. He's got a WrestleMania match with John Cena. He's a superstar. If he's not a superstar, he's very much got the rocket strapped to him, and he's on his way. Montez Ford, he's the next one, or everybody wants him to be the next one. Well, it's funny. I did a poll on this on TikTok recently, and people actually like LA Knight and want him to be the next guy. I get it, I do, but for me, it's Montez Ford. He's got the charisma. He's got the ability, he's got the athleticism. Now he's bulked up, he's got the body that WWE wants for their champions to have. So it was really good to see Tez get this opportunity, following on from the opportunity in the Elimination Chamber. So they're not doing a dramatic split between Tez and Dawkins. They're giving him opportunities on singles, and it also gives Theory something to do whilst John Cena's not around, because John Cena's off making movies. So it makes sense, and it was a good match. Tez got in some really good spots, some really good pieces, but Theory was never going to lose on the road to Mania. So of course Theory wins this one. And then instead of beat down like he did last week, he's more concerned about delivering a promo to John Cena at the end of the match, where he says, like, look, John Cena doesn't believe in me. Montez Ford didn't believe in me, but now he does because I've just beaten him. So John Cena at Mania, you'll believe in me too. And yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense in the story. I think it's difficult for Theory to try and carry this one on his own. I think other times when they've had wrestlers carry WrestleMania feuds on their own with a special guest who's not really around until Mania, it's been someone who's a lot more experienced. So you think last year it was Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes, and Rollins carried it by himself for weeks before Cody showed up, or even better, Kevin Owens. Austin never showed up at an event. There was one video package, but aside from that, Kevin Owens carried the whole feud by himself, promo after promo, for weeks in the run-up to WrestleMania. I think it's a bit harder for Theory. I think he's struggling a little bit, but I think he's doing really well with where he is in his career, with his promos where they are, with his character where it is. I think he's doing really well, and regardless, I think his match with Cena will be good at Mania and will be worth the watch. And it'll be interesting, is Cena gonna put him over? And if he does, how's it gonna play out? And then up next, we caught up with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. So everyone was together: Roman, Jimmy, Jay, Solo, and Heyman. And it was interesting. There was lots of layers to this. So Jimmy started out by saying how there was nothing more painful to him than being ripped away from his brother. And the way that he phrased it, it sounded like he was talking to Roman. Or talking at Roman. No one reacted to it. And then he said, but Sami Zayn. So he kind of said what everyone's really thinking, but he then pinned it on Sami. So that was really interesting. And they talked about how they were going to take care of business at Mania. And Roman said that, I hope so. Then Roman asked for the room, but then told Jay to stay. And then this is interesting because this is the first time that Roman and Jay have been on screen together since Jay walked out on Roman and the Bloodline at the end of Royal Rumble when they were given that beatdown on Sami. So, and then we've had all the ups and downs that we've had for the last few weeks. So this was the first time they've been together, and there was a lot of tension. And Roman essentially asked Jay if Jay was in the Bloodline or not, and Jay said, "Yes, I'm Bloodline." And Roman said, "That's all I need to hear." And so he dismissed Jay. But then, just as Jay stood up, Roman stopped him and said, "Jay, I love you." And then he looked away, and obviously there's the pregnant pause, there's the anticipation that Jay would say, "I love you too, Us," or whatever it might be. And Jay never said anything. He kept looking at Roman, but then he kept looking off screen. And he looks at Roman, looks off screen, and then he left without saying anything. And then the person that Jay was looking at came back into screen, which was Paul Heyman, the wise man. And Paul Heyman asked Roman, "Did you get the answers that you were looking for?" And Roman said, "Yes, I got the answers." So what answer was Roman after? Was he after the fact that Jay said that he's in the Bloodline? Or was he wanting Jay to say, "I love you" back and kind of cement that family bond? Has there been any recognition of the fact that Jay didn't say it back? Is that going to become an issue later on? And it was interesting that in a segment later on, Heyman comes out to the corridor, speaks to the Usos and to Solo, and essentially sends the Usos back to their private plane with their special food spread. But he asks Solo to stay. So, and at the point, the Usos don't really react to it. They're just like, "Oh, more food for us." But is this Roman starting to lean more on Solo and starting to kind of cut out the Usos a little bit? Fractions within the Bloodline, all looks like it would solved, but maybe not between Roman and the rest of the Bloodline. So it was interesting how that all played out. Then after the piece with Roman and the Bloodline, we then got a promo package for the Brock versus Omos match. But interestingly, it wasn't Brock or Omos. It was more one of these tail of the tape type promo matches where there was basically a narrator going through all of the different attributes of Brock Lesnar and why he's so phenomenal, but then going through all the different attributes of Omos and why he's so dangerous and why this is going to be such a killer match, and comparing the two. And you know what? It sounds good. It's definitely a match that I want to see now. Whether it's a WrestleMania match, there's not a feud in there. The reason why it's a WrestleMania match is because it's Brock Lesnar's name and it's Omos's size. In terms of actual feud and rivalry and story, there isn't much there, and it will be interesting to see how this plays out as well, as to what Brock has done a great job so far selling the threat of Omos. So it'll be interesting as to who's going to go over. Is this going to be the start of an Omos push? If he beats Brock Lesnar, not many men have beaten Brock Lesnar. So if Omos does manage to beat Brock, then is this him heading towards the world title picture? Or, if Brock puts Omos down, Brock doesn't need it, but it would squash Omos. So I don't know what they're going to do there. It's going to be a bit of a tricky one. But regardless, I do want to see that match. And then after that, they did have a match for Omos with Mustafa Ali. And essentially, it was a glorified squash match for Omos in the run-up to Mania, where he beat Ali within 2 minutes, just destroyed him. Which looks good for Omos and feeds into Ali's struggle storyline as well. So it was a good spot. It did what it was supposed to do. And then after this, we went into a WWE special edition of Impaulsive TV with Logan Paul himself. So we'd seen Logan Paul backstage pretty much blank The Miz, and then he came out, and this was really, really interesting. And if you've seen the show, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, get in touch with us on TikTok and Twitter and YouTube, the same handle at Imagine the Pop, because watching this, it looked like the crowd were a bit confused, but not confused in they were quiet, but confused in the fact that they were actually cheering for Logan at the start. And then you remember that actually Logan Paul is famous and he does have a fan base. The Impaulsive TV show is massive. It is a massive podcast. And yes, there are a large number of people that don't like Logan Paul for various reasons, but there's a lot of people that do like him. In fact, on the entranceway, I don't know if he was planted, but on the entranceway as Logan was coming in, there was a teenager holding up a Drink Prime sign. It could have been a plant to help Logan continue to push his Prime drink that he has shares in, but there, you know, there's a sense where Logan Paul, he does have a fan base, and also his time in the WWE, he has been really impressive. I know there are some hardcore fans that say he's not a wrestler, he's not paying his dues, he's not doing the house shows, etc. But you know what? He comes in, he's a better promo than most of the roster, and he can go. Yes, he blew out his knee after that match with Roman Reigns, so he's not got the conditioning to do it week after week after week. But to come in and do these headline matches, to do these spots, he's got enough. He's got enough to be entertaining. And at the end of the day, if he's bringing in the eyeballs and he's delivering on a match, I don't know what the problem is. So he's very good at what he's doing, and he has a fan base. And so at the start of this promo, he was kind of getting cheers. Like, people were kind of on his side, but he's very definitely a heel. Very definitely a heel against a Seth Rollins face. And so even though he was getting these cheers, he was pushing a whole heel narrative, and it felt a bit messy. It felt like you could tell that he's not used to working a crowd the same way that the rest of the roster are. But when he eventually got to the cheap heat kind of digs on your local city, St. Louis digs, that's when the crowd were like, okay, yes, we do hate this guy. I am going to boo him. I am going to give him that heel heat. And so, you know, when he leaned into those digs on St. Louis about the Rams moving to LA and things like that, and he started getting that cheap heat, which is good. But then he started playing clips of what happened the last time that he met Rollins, where he knocked him out, and he started playing them over and over again and putting clown faces on Rollins as Rollins kept getting knocked out. And then he got interrupted. His mic went off, and you're like, oh, what's going on here? And then cut, obviously, to backstage, and it's Seth Rollins in the production truck messing around with the microphone, and then he cues his own music. Seth Rollins comes down, and it's great. As usual, he's serenading the crowd. He's got his swagger. The crowd are singing along with him, and he gets down to the ring, and Logan's got a microphone, so you think there's going to be a bit of a chat, but Rollins just jumps straight on Logan, starts hitting him. They roll out of the ring. The officials come in to try and separate them, but they keep fighting, and it's the usual kind of, the officials separate them, and then they come back together, and then the officials separate them, and then they come back together. And then at one point in the kerfuffle, Rollins has Logan Paul down. He's got him on the announce table. So Rollins goes up onto the turnbuckle. You think Rollins is going to do some kind of a frog splash onto the table. It's going to be epic. But then the security pulls Logan off the table. But Rollins is already up on the turnbuckle. He does a crossbody from the turnbuckle down to the floor on some officials. And then he gets up. But as he gets up, he turns around and Logan's right there. And again, sucker punches him. One right hand with, as Corey Grave describes it, those titanium reinforced steel pins in his right hand. So Logan's got that one lucky punch, and just like last time, Seth Rollins sells it beautifully. One punch knockout, face down on the floor, and then Logan walks out kind of chatting on to the camera as he walks through the entranceway. But a good segment, and a good effort by all in selling the match at Mania, especially Rollins. Because when you think about it, Rollins, the caliber that he is, the level that he's on, and he is selling for this match. He is selling Logan Paul just giving him these knockout punches. And he is proper selling it. He's proper going down and being knocked out for a while. And, I mean, he's Seth freaking Rollins. Logan Paul, yeah, he had a main event with Roman. But as Seth has said recently, Logan Paul, he's a celebrity tourist. And yet he's selling for this guy. He's putting him over to build this match. And it's just really impressive by Rollins. Just his ability to do business. And you hear all of these rumors and these stories of how certain wrestlers and certain stars were never willing to do business or really were upset about the booking. But if you look at what Rollins has done for the last year at least, same with AJ Styles, just lost time and time again to put over the other talent to further the story. So Rollins, he lost 3 in a row to Cody Rhodes. And that last match, that I know a lot of people say is match of the year, that last match, Cody Rhodes had one arm in Hell in a Cell. Like, if he was to... I'm laughing because it's professional wrestling, and so I know you can't apply reality to it. But if you applied a level of logic and reality to that match, Seth freaking Rollins versus a one-armed man in Hell in a Cell, Seth Rollins wins that all day. All day. But the fact that Rollins not only was willing to do business, but did such a good job and put on such a good match to sell it, is just, he's working at another level. He's fantastic. He's really, really good. The utmost respect for Seth Rollins, and not just his abilities, but just his willingness to do business for the good of the company and the good of the story, and knowing his role. I've seen interviews where he feels, you can tell he wants his spot, he wants his flowers, he wants his world title run, and hopefully after everything's said and done with this reign for Roman, and maybe they split the titles again, hopefully Rollins gets another run because he really deserves it. But he's also willing to do business, which is fantastic and great for the industry, to be honest. A great example for everybody in the locker room. But yeah, sorry, a bit of a rant on Seth Rollins there. I wanted to say that piece about Cody Rhodes having one arm all year, because that really bugged me. It was a great match, but Cody Rhodes had one arm. There was no way Seth Rollins would have lost that match. I don't care how much heart and how much grit and how much determination Cody Rhodes has. There's no way Seth should have lost that match. Anyway, rant over, back to Raw, back to the show. And after you had that segment with Impaulsive TV, then came another match. It's a wrestling show. Let's have matches. And this time it was Dom Mysterio versus Johnny Gargano. And there's a couple of things I want to say about this one. Quickly. Number one, Johnny Gargano selling the attack from Grayson Waller on NXT. I love the synergy. I love the cross-brand promotion. Elevating their match at Stand and Deliver. Elevating the NXT brand is fantastic. So Gargano comes out with tape on his arm and around his ribs from the attack that Grayson Waller did to him last week. If you don't watch NXT, that's fine. They showed you a recap of the attack from Grayson Waller. If you don't know who Grayson Waller is, you will do very, very soon. He is a fantastic talent in NXT that I think is ready to pop. This run with Gargano is potentially a prelude to him coming to the main roster. We'll see. If he doesn't come in the next few weeks after Mania, I'd give it a year and you'll have Grayson Waller on the main roster. He's an exciting talent. He can go in the ring, but his promo game is just on another level compared to everybody else in NXT right now. He's fantastic. But anyway, Gargano comes out and he's flanked by Dexter Lumis. And then Dominik Mysterio comes out and he's flanked by Damian Priest. And they have a really good match that goes across a couple of segments, goes across the commercial break. And there's a good intelligence to the match with Johnny. Obviously, he's got his ribs taped up from the attack from Grayson. So Dom focuses on that and does quite a move set to kind of work on the ribs. So it's a good match. It's a good, solid match. And the most interesting bit about this match is it was a clean match. no interference from Dexter Lumis or from Damian Priest. Normally there'd be some shenanigans going on, and normally Dom would get the win by having Damian Priest do something and interfere. But they didn't do that this time round. It was a clean match between Johnny and Dom. And after you've had a clean match from Tez and Austin Theory, where Dawkins was out in the back, you've got another clean match here where, and it's interesting. I think this is interesting because of what we've become used to, which is a lot of tag matches, a lot of 2 and 3 person tag matches, or a lot of everyone's in a faction and the faction's always with them and there's always some interference, there's always something going on. So it's actually, I think it's really refreshing that on this week's show we've had Tez do something by himself, and we've actually had Dom and Gargano have a clean match by themselves. And I actually think this is really, really important, because if you are going to push talent to have important feuds and to go for singles titles, they need to be able to point towards a track record of success in singles matches, and they need to have that experience on TV of running a singles match for 10 minutes, for 15 minutes. And we need to be familiar with them as a talent doing things by themselves and having capability by themselves. There needs to be that element where we buy into that individual being that good as the story is telling us they are. So I think it's really good that they've actually given Dom this match by himself, because we all know he's going to fight Rey by himself at WrestleMania. It's going to be a one-on-one match. It's not going to be a tag match. It's not going to be whatever. It's going to be a one-on-one. So to give Dom this match with the level of talent that Gargano is, to have them go one-on-one and to be a good, solid match, I think was really smart, really interesting. And then, after the match, you got to play into the storyline. So Dom gets the pin on Gargano, does the frog splash onto his injured ribs, gets the pin. And then Dom and Priest stand in the ring afterwards. Dom, the usual stick about his good-for-nothing dad. But the kicker is that this Friday on SmackDown, the Mysterio family is going to be there. So Dom's mum and his sister are going to be there. And Dom says that he's going to ask his mum's permission to fight Rey at WrestleMania. So who knows how that's going to go down, but that's what we were kind of thinking in the last episode when we recapped SmackDown, is that there needs to be something that tips Rey over the edge into accepting this match with Dom, and including the family, and having something just go beyond the pale with the family, I think is the only way they're going to do it. So it'll be interesting if they do that on SmackDown on Friday and give themselves a full week's build up to Mania, or if they kind of just keep moving the needle and they wait until the Hall of Fame next week. Who knows? But yeah, so that'll be interesting to watch out for on SmackDown this week. And then after that match and that promo, we had a pre-recorded promo from Edge, and as you'd expect from Edge, just another level. So the production, everything, it's just Edge in darkness with a couple of genuine candles to light his face, and all you can see is his face, and he gives a very intense promo to Finn Balor, talking about the kind of nature that he has that he normally keeps hidden, but inside Hell in a Cell it would come out. So the usual stuff about going into Hell in a Cell and how it's more dangerous than ever. But the interesting thing here was that Edge called out the Demon. So for those of you who don't know, Finn Balor has an alternate ego called the Demon, where he's got a whole load of face and body paint going on. And back in the day, the key gimmick with the Demon was that he could not be beaten, and he was never pinned. He was never pinned. Finn Balor became the champion with the Demon, and he was never pinned. In fact, the only time the Demon has a pin on record, I believe, although I'm sure you're going to at me if I'm wrong, is when he fought Roman Reigns last year. And even that was heavily covered by interference and a whole load of other things going on. So the Demon has, as a character, has a reputation. and has a very particular presentation as well. So the idea that we're not just going to get Edge versus Finn in Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania, but we're going to have the demon version of Balor at WrestleMania in Hell in a Cell against Edge is very, very, very exciting. This WrestleMania card is stacked. There's this match. There's the IC title triple threat with Gunther, Drew, and Sheamus. There's obviously Roman and Cody. There's the Usos versus KO. This WrestleMania is proper stacked. There's so much to look forward to. Seth and Logan are going to put on a great show. I'll get into the WrestleMania card. I'll do a proper predictions episode. But I'm so excited for WrestleMania, and they're just turning everything up to 11, and putting the demon in this match is just turning this match up to 11. So this is really exciting. So after we've had that Edge promo, then it was time for Rhea Ripley to come out. And interestingly, as I was saying a moment ago, Rhea Ripley comes out by herself. So she's always been flagged by the Judgment Day or Dom. She's always had someone with her. But this week, this Monday night, she came out by herself. And this is really interesting. And again, I don't know if it's the WWE creative responding to criticism directly, or if they're just very aware of it and so they're auto-correcting. But again, Rhea Ripley, as good as she is, she's known for being part of the Judgment Day and being part of that faction and all the menacing activity with that faction, or Dom and Ray in their storyline. It's interesting, you don't realise until Rhea does come out by herself that she hasn't stood on her own for quite a while. And so yes, she did go through the Royal Rumble, but because she's been so involved in wider storylines, why should she as an individual beat Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania? Why should she as an individual be the SmackDown Women's Champion? And what would she do with that? How would she carry that? Is she a capable individual to carry that spot on her own? Or is she just a shining light in a wider faction? Can she only just play her part in a wider group? So it was really interesting that she came out by herself and did her own promo. And I'm telling you, it was a good, solid promo. Really composed, interacted with the crowd. They tried to knock her off with the what chants, and she spoke to it and nipped it in the bud straight away. They started engaging with her and doing these mammy chants, and so she engaged with that and she enjoyed that. But she was good, she was strong, she was composed. Not great though, not great. And I think for anybody who's a bit concerned about her promo game, yes, she's not there yet, but she's only 26 and she's only been doing this for a couple of years, and she hasn't had that much time on her own, on the mic, in the ring, in front of a crowd, but she's still really, really good. And I think the only thing here is sometimes we think that wrestlers have to be perfect before their push, or if they have a push and there's elements of weakness as they're getting their push, some people can complain and say, oh, so and so doesn't deserve it because their promos aren't good enough. Well, you know what? You're not gonna have everybody who's good enough for a push be 100% 360 all round. There's going to be some weaknesses with some people in some areas, and they can only work on it by being given the opportunity. Look at Roman Reigns. His promos used to be a weakness, and now he is the Don with his promos, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So Rhea came out. I have no problem with her promo not being great, just being good, because she's building. The great thing about Rhea, though, wasn't especially what she said, because it was quite script heavy. The intention was there, though. Essentially, that she's going to beat Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. That's all you needed to get from that promo. The good bit of this whole segment was actually when Bayley and Damage Control then came out. And Bayley had some beef with Rhea about how she wants to be a star and she wants respect, but she's not coming to Damage Control. Damage Control can help her out. And then Rhea saying that she doesn't need them. And so that starts a thing that ends up in a match, an official match between Rhea Ripley and Bayley. And these are both two very good, fantastic, excellent women's wrestlers. And so them in a one-on-one match on Raw is great. And it was a really good match. And there was lots of interesting things about this. It did what I said the match with Dom and Gargano did earlier, where having Rhea by herself, no one around to support her, taking on Bayley, who's a former world champion, who's been doing this for 10 years now, by herself, going toe-to-toe. It was really good for her character. It was really good for her growth with the audience and her standing as a solo competitor. And it was interesting as well that there was a couple of things in the match that Bayley really sold on. So the fact that Rhea's supposed to be so formidable, well, how do you show that? Well, one of the ways is have a kick out of Bayley's finishing move after 1 count, which is what happened. Bayley did a Bayley to belly on Rhea Ripley, which for years was Bayley's finishing move and would at least get a 2.5 count. Rhea legit kicked out after 1. Legit kicked out. So they're really doing everything they can to build Rhea as this force. It was a really good match. Of course, they've got to do their own promo for their own match for Damage Control versus Becky, Lita, and Trish. So partway through the match, Becky, Lita, and Trish show up. They come out ringside and they're just watching quite cocky with a giant bag of popcorn. Lita and Trish at one point though see some interference, and so they go to attack Dakota and Io, and that leaves Becky to just distract Bayley a bit. So it's not the cleanest of wins. So Rhea does beat Bayley, which is a big win for her. I think it's probably her biggest win on the main roster for me. It's not the cleanest of win because Becky was distracting Bayley, so there is a bit of protection there. But nonetheless, still a really good big win for Rhea. And again, giving her that little boost that she needs as a solo competitor. Coming into the final hour then of Raw, it is a long show. There is a lot going on, but with Rhea and Bayley, with Dom and Johnny Gargano, with Austin Theory, with the Bloodline, there's a lot to enjoy in this show. There is a lot. It's a long show, but there has been a lot to enjoy. There's a lot going on, but we're coming into the final hour, and you have a backstage scene with Otis, and he's torn between Chad Gable needing him as a backup for his match with Ricochet, or with Maxine Dupree wanting him to go and take some model photographs. And it's interesting that in the moment, Otis chooses Chad Gable, and he comes out with Chad Gable for Gable's match against Ricochet. And this is promoting their showcase match, their 4-man tag match at Mania, where Gable and Otis are going to go against Ricochet and Braun, Viking Raiders, and Street Profits at WrestleMania. So it's part of that build. But not just that. I'm telling you, if you haven't seen Raw, this match with Gable and Ricochet is worth watching Raw just for this match. I know people are going to watch Raw just for the Roman and Cody promo, or just for the KO and Sami promo, or for a few different things. Genuinely, even though Gable and Ricochet, they're not top of the card, their match was fantastic. It was a really good match, as you'd expect from Gable and Ricochet. They're both top talents. Gable did a fantastic job with Cody Rhodes last week. Another great job with Ricochet. Some great spots, some great moves. Gable cracked out like some really good new moves that you don't see very often. And they even got to the point where the crowd was chanting, "This is awesome." And how many times do you have a "This is awesome" chant on a week-to-week episode? So that hopefully tells you how good this match was. Unfortunately, Maxine Dupree comes out and kind of collects Otis. There's no real reason. There's no, like, if Otis has made the decision to not go to the photographer and to come out, then why would he suddenly just go back? It didn't really make sense. But Maxine Dupree comes out. Otis leaves with Maxine. So that distracts Gable. Ricochet hits a move and then goes up onto the top turnbuckle, hits a shooting star press, beautiful, onto Gable, and gets the pin. 1, 2, 3. Really good match. Really good finish to the match as well. And then after that match, we come to the second to last segment of the whole show. And you might be wondering, where's Bianca Belair? We've gone this whole show and we've not mentioned Bianca Belair once. She's the Raw Women's title. It's Raw. Where is Bianca Belair? Well, this is where she is. She's in the second to last segment, and she has a tag match. Bianca Belair and Asuka versus Chelsea Green and Piper Niven. It was supposed to be Chelsea and Carmella, but apparently Carmella wasn't able to make it, so they subbed in Piper Niven. And this is, unfortunately, the typical opponents forced to tag with each other. It doesn't end well. And it's that typical trope. And even to the point where Corey Graves on commentary calls it out as, we've seen this before, competitors who are set to go against each other tag and it doesn't end well. And sure enough, the match is all right. It's okay. The best bit of the match is the final spot where Bianca Belair is able to lift Piper Niven up for the KOD and deliver it. That is very impressive. Bianca Belair is a phenomenal athlete. That is a great spot and a good finish. But then you have the turn from... You've had tension throughout the whole match, and then you have the turn from Asuka onto Bianca, knocking Bianca down. So, you're now set up for... they're now definitely, instead of just being face and face and kind of mutual respect, there's now definitely some animosity, some friction between the two, which is good. But why didn't this happen 3 weeks ago? Why did this not happen 3 weeks ago? Asuka is a phenomenal women's wrestler. Bianca Belair is a great women's wrestler with fantastic talent. They will have, I said this last week, they will have a really good match at Mania. But they have done a poor job in building it. I know the bloodline is the main story. I know Seth Rollins and Logan Paul is there. I know John Cena is there. I know there's so many mouths to feed, and there's so many big name stars and so many big name matches and so many big storylines going into WrestleMania. But it really does feel like Bianca and Asuka have been left at the bottom of the pile, and it's really unfortunate. It really does feel like whenever the WWE creative have meetings, it's almost like if they had an hour meeting, they'd spend 57 minutes talking about the rest of the roster. They'd have a chat for 2 minutes, and then they go, oh wait, we've got 30 seconds left and we still haven't done anything with Bianca Belair. What should we do? It feels like that, and it's a real shame because these are really talented, fantastic women who deserve more. So you know what? They've got one more show because they don't go on to SmackDown. So these guys, they've got one more Raw next week. Hopefully it really does something to build the excitement next week, whatever they've got planned. Either way, I'm sure they'll deliver in their match. And even if there hasn't been the build and the excitement, hopefully the match delivers. And yeah, we have a great match that hopefully they steal the show. That'd show them. Imagine that. Imagine if Bianca and Asuka have such a good match at WrestleMania, they steal the show, they do a match of the year. That would be amazing. I would love to see that. That would be fantastic. Bianca and Asuka, you probably will never hear this. Go have match of the weekend at Mania. Go on. Go do it. Go do it. That would be fantastic. That would be great. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of the recap. We've saved the biggest for last. Roman Reigns returns to Raw. So Roman Reigns comes out and he has his big entrance and he meanders down with the music going and he lifts the title up and the pyros and all that stuff. And he comes out and he says, St. Louis, acknowledge me. And everyone goes, yeah. It's fantastic. It's a great moment. But then before Roman can say anything, Cody comes out. Cody's music hits. Cody comes out. And they just get straight into it. They start the backwards and forwards. And Cody says about how there's been a lot of talk about me and from Mr. Heyman. But Roman, I want to hear it from you. What do you think the problem is? And legitimately, this promo was fire. I'm not going to go through it beat for beat because I'm not going to do it justice. You need to go onto YouTube or you need to go video on demand and you need to watch this yourself because it is fire. To the point where when Roman does his bit, he goes really deep. He shoots his shots and he really goes for Cody, similar to how Cena went for Austin Theory a few weeks ago. He says about how Cody always runs away. He references the failed Stardust gimmick. He references AEW and how Cody couldn't even get over in his own company. And then he starts talking about how Cody needs to get used to the idea that he's going to fail again at Mania, and what is he going to do the next day when he realizes it's a failure? What's his dad going to think of him? But then I'm telling you, Cody Rhodes comes back, and this is the difference, right? When you have an up-and-coming talent versus a legend. So when you have Austin Theory and you have John Cena arguably destroyed Austin Theory in that promo. There was nothing that Austin Theory could say, and he kind of, it was very one-sided. But for me, this shows that Cody is ready, because Roman did not hold back and went in, but then Cody came right back and stood his ground. And I tell you, the first thing that made me the most excited was that Cody said that we need to stop talking about his dad. Yes! Yes! Thank you, Cody Rhodes. I've been saying this for weeks, that we need to stop talking about Cody Rhodes' dad, Dusty Rhodes. It needs to be Cody's story. It needs to be why Cody is doing this thing. Why should we want Cody to win? It can't be about his dad. So I love the fact that Cody came out and said, one more word about my dad and I'm going to vomit. Like, he drew the line. He said, look, my dad's not here. My brother works for another company. This is me. I'm fighting for this title for my victory. And yes, that's what we needed. Again, I don't know if this is the creative team reacting to what's been online or just being self-aware. I'm not sure, but this was really, really needed for me. And then Cody went in to give a premonition or a prediction of what would happen to Roman Reigns and the Bloodline after Mania if Roman were to lose the title. And it was really interesting. He said that Jay would leave, and then that Jimmy would leave. And it was really interesting that Roman sold this really, really well. So Roman, we know, stoic, confident, grand, cocky, can't get rocked. He's always got a give and take. So, like, doesn't really let things hit him. Maybe kind of grimaces every so often, but he really doesn't show anything. Where Roman did a really good job of, when Cody was talking about Jay leaving and Jimmy leaving, it seemed to hit Roman differently. And then Cody, he even referenced Solo, and he was about to say that Solo will leave as well. But before he did that, he had a real go at Solo, which was really, really good. Because Solo, just as you'd expect, wingman of the tribal chief, just staring daggers into Cody. And so Cody just called him out on it and said, look, you've been doing this, but let me tell you, being the guy who flanks the champion, I've been there, I wasn't ready, you're not ready. And that gets a really good reaction. And then he says that Paul Heyman won't be the wise man anymore. Paul Heyman will go back to being an advocate, which is obviously alluding to the idea that he'll go back to Brock Lesnar. And so that Roman Reigns will be all by himself. He'll have no titles, no bloodline. He'll be a chief without a tribe. And it was a really good moment from Cody. It was a really good piece. But then Roman sold it beautifully, because Roman then didn't come back with anything. Roman walks off. Roman's got nothing to say. Roman just walks out of there. And so him and Heyman start heading back. But Solo stays in the ring. Solo, he's not happy with what Cody just said and the disrespect. And so Cody starts shouting at Solo and saying, right, do you want to go? Do you want to go? And so, but at this point, Heyman grabs Reigns as they're walking back, turns around and says, my tribal chief, look what's happening. And Roman is surprised to see that Solo is still in the ring and that he hasn't come out. And so he shouts at Solo, but it's a strange one. He shouts at Solo and he says, Solo, now. It's almost like he's calling a dog. It was really strange because we've not seen that interaction with Roman and Solo. We've seen that with Roman and Jay and Jimmy, but Solo, there's almost been like this special relationship or this special position where Solo has just been the loyal guy. But this week, he kind of shouted at Solo like a dog. So Solo, he starts leaving, he's partway through the ropes, and then Cody kind of just needles him a little bit by picking up the mic and says, just as I thought, you're not ready. And then Solo, he stops, turns around, gets ready to give the Samoan spike, but Cody kicks him in the face and stops him. And then Solo was a bit stunned because, no one stops the Samoan Spike. And then he kind of revs himself up. He slaps himself on the head, and he's just about to go and attack Cody. But then Roman steps up on the apron and stops him and says, "Not this week, next week, not now, next week." And then Raw goes off the air. And so it's really, really good. You've got fantastic promo from Roman, like a great volley back from Cody. You've got some further descent within the bloodline. And it's really interesting that it's just come around on social media today. Some clips from a camera in the crowd after Raw went off air, where Roman and Solo are walking back up the ramp. And Roman is just having a go. Just having a go at Solo and proper digging him out. And Solo's just taking it. So it's really interesting if they're going to have that as B-roll somewhere. And if Solo is now going to be a danger to Roman, if Solo is now going to turn. So it's really, really interesting. So many good things. A great start, good stuff in the middle, a great end. Exciting going into SmackDown, exciting going into WrestleMania in 2 weeks' time. A really good episode of Raw. And there you have it. Another episode of Imagine the Pop, a wrestling podcast. Full recap of Raw as well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading or streaming. Thank you for sticking with us if you're still here. I know the Raw recap, it's a long episode because there's a lot to recap, especially at this time of year. So appreciate you sticking with us. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've enjoyed the recap and the opinions and the ideas. Please engage with us through TikTok and Twitter and YouTube. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear your questions. The handle is @ImagineThePop. And this is such an exciting time of year. Such an exciting time of year. So many things to look forward to. But as always, I'm going to leave you with this final idea. We'll be back for another episode next week after SmackDown. But one final idea. Imagine the pop. Imagine the pop when Solo Sikoa turns on Roman Reigns and gives Roman the Samoan Spike. Imagine the pop when that happens. Or imagine the pop when Jay, Jimmy, and Solo all turn on Roman Reigns at the same time. Imagine the pop when that happens. Thank you guys. Take care.